I've been playing Avowed on Xbox Game Pass because quite frankly, yung 3,890 pesos na price tag niya is a week's worth of groceries for me. I love what Obsidian did for the Outer Worlds, but is Avowed worth that kind of investment for us Filipino gamers? Hey everyone, mga ka-gamer, Gamer After Shift here. I've spent the last few days playing Avowed, Obsidian's new RPG, and I've already put in several hours, enough to complete the first map. As a Filipino gamer on a budget, that 3,800 price tag is a big deal. Before we jump in, I just want to be clear that this is my take, my experience, and my first impressions. Alright, I don't want to waste your time, so let's jump right in. Let's dive straight into one of Avowed's biggest strengths, the visuals. This isn't just a pretty game, it's a world that compels you to explore. Think the Outer Worlds meets Ori and the Will of the Wisps in terms of visual power, but with incredible detail. The day-night cycle is remarkable. Vibrant colors during the day then give way to a moody, atmospheric night, highlighted by the glow of bioluminescent fungi and crystals practically everywhere. And I really appreciate the little details like that, using glowing mushrooms instead of the usual lamps and braziers. It's not that there isn't practical lighting in the game, but this just adds so much to the fantasy atmosphere. It feels more unique, more Fae-like actually, than your typical high fantasy medieval setting. Especially in first person, this atmospheric lighting isn't just impressive, it's very immersive. You can almost feel the world around you. For a game all about drawing you in, Avowed's visuals absolutely deliver. And here's where things get a little shaky. I've had some performance problems. We're talking frame drops. Basically, the game stutters or looks choppy, especially when you move the camera fast or sprint. It's not always bad, but it happens enough to be annoying. Overall, the visuals are stunning, no questions. The game is beautiful, but those frame drops took me some time to make adjustments to get rid of. Not a big deal, but would have appreciated having none of it, especially for a game at this price point. Optimization and performance watered down visual strengths during my early game, so let's see if the gameplay can make up for it. Let's talk about gameplay. Avowed gives you a choice, first person or third person. I usually prefer third person in RPGs, but Avowed's first person is surprisingly good. It really pulls you into the world, especially during combat. Speaking of combat, the combat in Avowed is fluid and responsive, and the magic system is incredibly satisfying. The spells have weight to them, you don't just cast them, you feel them. And I love the little details like the chanting whenever you're casting before the spell takes effect. It sort of adds this immersion and just improves the overall combat experience for me. I'm currently going for a magic rogue build using daggers up close and magic for range attacks and crowd control. Not sure how it'll fare in the long run, but it's effective so far. But the dodge mechanic is a real problem for me. Well, not really that much of a big problem. I just wish it's remappable because it's directional, which is fine, but the timing and input feels awkward to use. It's hard to be precise. But yeah, ideally I'd remap it. It doesn't ruin the combat, which is generally medium paced, but it's a noticeable flaw if this is gonna be a first time for you. I prefer dodges that feels more like, the usual one that's not directional, just dodge away, and it's more about timing. Still, the combat aspect is strong, so now I'm curious to see how much I can customize my character to make the most out of it, so let's dive into the ability tree. Moving on to the ability tree. Honestly, it's simpler than I expected for an RPG. You've got 3 classes, basically 3 main playstyles, and each one has a pretty limited number of abilities. It feels more like the streamlined skill system you'd find in an action-adventure game rather than a deep RPG. You do get to customize your spells with upgrades, and you can overlap your skills with one class versus the other. But even with these upgrades and overlappings, it's still the same core spells, doesn't really make up for the lack of overall depth. The ability tree isn't a strong point for Avowed, at least not yet. I'm used to RPGs that give you way more options to create a truly unique character build. It's not saying that you can't do that here, because you definitely can, but it's really too shallow for my taste. Because to me, the process of creating a character that perfectly fits your playstyle is a huge part of what makes RPGs so replayable. Avowed does let you use your companion's abilities as a part of your arsenal, which adds some variety, but it's not the same as having a deep, customizable skill tree for your own character. I'm hoping there's more more to it later in the game, maybe advanced classes or hidden skills. To be fair, the gear enchantments and totems sort of adds customization, as well as your godlike abilities, but I don't know, I'm just much more comfortable in having more options for dumping my ability points. Let me know in the comments if you agree, but for now, it's definitely a limited area. Now, let's talk about the world of Avowed itself. It's incredibly immersive, and not just because of the striking visuals. It's the combination of things. The day-night cycle isn't just a visual effect, you can really feel the shift in the atmosphere as the world changes. The sound design is superb, subtle audio cues all around you, the chatter of people in towns, the music perfectly complementing the mood. Even small details like being able to swim underwater. Actually, this isn't a small detail to me. Very few games add underwater features, and with detailed underwater sceneries to boot, it adds so much to the feeling of exploration. As someone new to the Pillars of Eternity lore, I appreciate how accessible Obsidian has made it. They've included this fantastic dialogue history feature. This is a lifesaver for understanding the complex lore. You can catch up on terms and concepts right in the middle of conversation. And the world itself feels rich with history. It reminds me of Baldur's Gate 3 in terms of the sheer depth of the lore. You get the sense that there's a massive untold story behind everything you see, though I'm pretty sure that's impossible, but still, it gives you that kind of immersive experience. I'm still early in the game, so I haven't encountered much of the political intrigue yet, but I'm hoping that becomes a major element. Then there's this pervasive fungus and infection theme. It's like The Last of Us, but with mind-altering rage instead of zombies. A really unsettling and unique element. Overall, Avowed creates a really compelling high fantasy world and its experience. It's a place you want to get lost in, explore every corner, uncover every secret, but how easy it is to actually do that, so we'll move on to navigation. Let's talk about navigation in Avowed. You've got a map and a compass, pretty standard fare for an RPG. The map itself is clear, the legend is easy to understand, and the compass is always visible. So far, so good. But here's my biggest gripe. You can't mark and label locations on the map. Nope, nothing. My standards for navigation is a game like Dragon Age Inquisition. For example, you can not only add markers, but the markers appear visually during exploration and even shows you the elevation, whether the marker is above or below you. It's incredibly intuitive and rightfully justified because much like Avowed, it's got a huge open world. In Avowed, you're stuck relying on visual landmarks and the legend. It works, but it's a missed opportunity, especially in a world this size. It kind of feels like a step backwards for a modern RPG, so while the map and compass gets the job done, they're definitely something I would see from an older, much cheaper game. Now, with all that said, we've covered a lot of ground, the good, the bad, and the in-between of my initial insights of the game. It all comes down to one thing, that price tag. Let's talk about the price. We're talking 3,890 pesos here in the Philippines. Now, Avowed has its strengths, the world is beautiful, and the combat is fun, but is it 3,890 pesos good? Honestly, I'm not so sure. We've seen the frame drops, we've seen the streamlined skill tree, and compared to the previous game Obsidian made, which is the Outer Worlds, which also cost less when it came out, it feels like we're getting less freedom to shape our character and the world. For this price, I expected a complete package, a game that looks great, runs smoothly, and gives me deep RPG systems and meaningful choices. Avowed delivers on some of that, but it falls short in key areas, especially on giving player agency. I was really hoping for more, especially for the cost. Lucky us because it's currently on Xbox Game Pass. So after all that, where do I stand on Avowed after these first few hours? It's a game with real potential. The world is gorgeous, and when the combat clicks, it's really fun. But the performance problems, that limited ability tree, and the price, they're holding it back. It's like having a fantastic meal but finding a hair in your food. You can still enjoy parts of it, but the overall experience is ruined. For my Filipino gamers out there, especially those on a budget like myself, I can't give it a full recommendation at its current price. My advice, wait for a sale or try it out on Game Pass if you can. Because with its offerings, I would say the price should be around 2,000 pesos more or less. And that's because of how much content the game has, because it's really a big game. It might become a great game eventually, but right now it feels like it needs a bit more time in the oven. If they actually add stuff and put it back in the oven. Now it's your turn. Have you played Avowed? What are your first impressions? Are you feeling the same way about the price, or am I being too harsh? What build are you going for? Share your thoughts, your frustration, everything. Let's talk about it in the comments section below. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more RPG content. It really does help the channel grow. I also stream on TikTok at Gamer After Shift every weekday, so come hang out and chat. Thanks for watching, mga ka-gamer, and I'll see you in the next one.